Growing up in my family felt like living under a spotlight that never shone on me unless it was to compare me unfavorably to my sister, Sarah. The youngest of two daughters, I quickly learned that fairness wasn't part of our household vocabulary. From the moment I could comprehend gifts and expectations, the disparity between Sarah and me was glaring. For her 16th birthday, Sarah received a brand new Volkswagen Beetle gleaming with a giant red bow. Meanwhile, on my special day, I got Dad's old Honda Civic. Its odometer stubbornly stuck at 150,000 miles, breaking down so often that I spent more time at the mechanic than behind the wheel. But the inequity extended far beyond material possessions. Our parents' favoritism seeped into every aspect of our lives. Sarah was their golden child, the pretty one, the social butterfly, the effortless achiever who could do no wrong. And then there was me, Lucy, the invisible daughter, forever chasing approval, but never quite catching it. Every accomplishment of mine seemed overshadowed by Sarah's mere existence. If I worked tirelessly for an A in school, they'd casually remark how Sarah had achieved the same without even trying. When Christmas rolled around, Sarah would unwrap expensive American Girl dolls, while I stared at knockoff versions from discount stores, pretending not to notice how cheaply made they were compared to hers. The emotional toll weighed heavier than any financial imbalance. There were countless nights when I cried myself to sleep, replaying moments where my parents dismissed my efforts or outright ignored them. One memory stands out vividly, scar etched deep within me. It was Christmas 1999, and we sat around the tree as presents piled up beneath it. Sarah squealed with delight as she unwrapped her dream doll, complete with intricate outfits and accessories. My turn came next. I tore open the wrapping paper eagerly, only to find a cheaper imitation doll staring back at me, its painted smile mocking my disappointment. "They look exactly the same," Mom said dismissively, though we all knew better. That moment crystallized everything I'd silently endured. The neglect, the comparisons, the unspoken message that I would always be second best. For as long as I could remember, the dream of owning a small country house had been my Buchanan place, where I could escape the suffocating expectations of my family and truly live for myself. It wasn't just about having four walls and a roof. It was about creating a sanctuary where their voices couldn't reach me. Every penny saved was a step closer to freedom, and I was willing to sacrifice everything to make it happen. I lived like a hermit compared to my colleagues. While they jetted off to exotic vacations, dined at trendy restaurants, or refreshed their wardrobes with seasonal sales, I stayed behind, clutching my worn-out handbag and reheating leftovers. My social life dwindled to coffee dates with Jenny, who understood my frugality because she'd seen how much rent I paid for that tiny one-bedroom apartment. Even then, I rarely splurged on lattes, opting instead for instant coffee at home. Each time I resisted buying something new, a dress I didn't need, a meal I could cook myself. I imagined walking through the door of my future cottage, breathing in the fresh air and feeling the weight of years of familial pressure lift off my shoulders. The pandemic shifted work culture, making remote jobs more common, and suddenly my dream felt within reach. For months, I scoured real estate websites during late nights when insomnia struck. One evening, after another grueling day at the office, I stumbled upon a listing that made my heart race. A quaint two-bedroom cottage nestled in the countryside, complete with a sunroom overlooking a lush garden. The price was perfect, almost too good to be true. As I stared at the photos, tears pricked my eyes, not from sadness but from hope. This was it, my safe haven, my fortress against the chaos of my family's demands. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, surrounded by spreadsheets detailing every cent I'd saved over the years. I whispered to myself, "This is your chance, Lucy. Don't let them take this away from you." The moment I mentioned the house during dinner, the air in the room shifted like a storm front rolling in. My mother's fork clattered against her plate as she stared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're buying what?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "A small country house." "Lucy, have you lost your mind?" I tried to explain, my voice steady despite the rising tension. "It's exactly what I've been saving for, Mom. A quiet place where I can work and live peacefully." Peacefully. Her laugh was bitter, almost mocking. "And what about your family? Did you even think about us for 1 second before making this selfish decision?" Before I could respond, Dad chimed in, his tone gruff and accusatory. "This isn't just about you, Lucy. You're part of something bigger. We've always expected more from your responsibility, consideration. Not this reckless nonsense." Reckless? The word stung, but I refused to back down. "It's not reckless. It's my life, my money, and my choice. I've worked hard for this." Sarah leaned forward, her expression eerily calm but laced with condescension. "Lucy, sweetie, we know you've worked hard, but sometimes you need to think beyond yourself. This house sits too small, too far away. What happens when Emma needs help with her homework, or Joey gets sick? How are we supposed to support each other if you're hiding out in the middle of nowhere? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Support each other. They'd never supported me, not really. Still, I forced myself to stay composed. I'm not asking anyone to move mountains for me. Why should I be expected to do the same for you? Mom slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes jump. Because that's what families do. We take care of each other. Or have you forgotten that? No, I shot back, my voice trembling with frustration. What I haven't forgotten is how much you've taken care of Sarand, how little you've ever done for me. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mom broke the silence, her voice cold and clipped. If you go through with this ridiculous purchase, don't expect us to stand by you. You'll regret it, Lucy. Mark my words. The tension at the dinner table reached its boiling point when my mother finally revealed their grand plan. Lucy, she began, her voice laced with forced sweetness but edged in steel. We've been thinking long and hard about this. Sarah, Tom, and the kids, they're going to move in with you. She said it as though it were a foregone conclusion, not a suggestion up for debate. I froze, my fork hovering midair, staring at her like she'd just announced aliens had landed in our backyard. What? The word came out strangled, barely audible over the chaos of children's laughter and clinking dishes. It's perfect, really, Mom continued, ignoring my shock. You have all that space in your new house, and they need somewhere bigger. It's practical. You can help each other. Think about the future of your nieces and nephews. Who else will step up if not you? Help each other, I echoed, incredulous. My eyes darted to Sarah, who sat there with an expression so pitiful it looked rehearsed. Her lower lip trembled slightly, and she glanced down at little Joey on her lap. Lucy, sweetie, she chimed in softly. It's just, we're so cramped in that tiny apartment. Emma doesn't even have a proper desk for homework. And Lucas trips over his soccer ball every time he tries to walk through the living room. And poor Joey, he wakes up crying every night because he's sharing our bedroom. Her words hit me like daggers wrapped in velvet. They weren't asking, they were manipulating, using guilt as their weapon. Every mention of the kids' struggles felt calculated, designed to twist my heartstrings until I snapped under the pressure. But what infuriated me most was how casually they assumed I would comply, as if my dreams, my life, meant nothing compared to their convenience. Dad leaned forward then, his face darkening with anger. This is what family does, Lucy, he growled, slamming his fist on the table so hard, the plates rattled. We take care of each other. Or have you forgotten that? You've always been selfish. But this takes it to a whole new level. Selfish? The accusation burned hotter than anything else. All those years of scrimping and saving, working tirelessly to build a life for myself, and now I was the villain. I'm selfish, I shot back, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. How is wanting a home for myself selfish? How is refusing to let 5 people invade my space selfish? Mom gasped dramatically, clutching her pearls like some melodramatic actress in a black and white film. Invade your space. These are your family members. Lucy. Your blood. How dare you speak about them like strangers? They are strangers, I shouted, surprising even myself with the raw emotion in my voice. Strangers who expect me to sacrifice everything I've worked for without even asking me first. Did any of you stop to think about what I want? About what I need? The room erupted into chaos. Emma stopped mid-cartwheel in the background, her wide eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before her. Lucas burst into tears, overwhelmed by the sudden tension. Even Joey started wailing, his cries piercing through the cacophony. Through it all, Sarah remained eerily composed, her earlier display of vulnerability replaced by a smug certainty that I would cave. You're being ridiculous, Dad barked, his voice thunderous. You're ungrateful, Lucy. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Done for me? I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. When have you ever done anything for me? Everything has always been about Sarah, her car, her education, her wedding, and now, her housing problem too. Why should I be the one to fix it? Sarah flinched at my words, but only for a moment. Then she straightened, her tone icy. If you cared about anyone but yourself, you wouldn't hesitate to do this for us. For the kids, that was the final straw. Something inside me snapped. No, I said firmly, standing up so abruptly my chair scraped against the floor. None of you are moving into my house. Ever? Do you understand? This is my home. Mine, not yours. Not Sarah's. Mine. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Then Mom broke it, her voice trembling with rage. You'll regret this, Lucy. Mark my words. When you're old and alone, don't come crawling back to us. I didn't wait for another word. Grabbing my purse, I stormed out of the house, leaving behind the shattered remains of whatever illusion of family harmony had existed before tonight. The room erupted into chaos as I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed to echo louder than any words. None of you are living in my house, I said firmly, my voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Ever. Is that clear enough for you? Mom gasped, clutching her pearls as if I'd just committed some unforgivable sin. Lucy, how can you be so cruel to your own sister? Her voice trembled with outrage, but beneath it, I detected the same manipulative tone she'd used countless times before. Dad's face turned red, veins bulging on his forehead as he slammed his fist on the table again. You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Sarah sat frozen, her calm facade cracking slightly as tears welled up in her eyes. Emma and Lucas have to share a room. Lucy, she pleaded, her voice shaking. Joey cries every night because he doesn't have space. Do you really want their suffering on your conscience? Their words hit me like waves crashing against a cliff, relentless, but ultimately powerless. For years I'd let them dictate my life, suppress my dreams, and make me feel small. Not anymore. This isn't about your kids or your problems, I shot back, my voice rising with every word. It's about me finally standing up for myself. My house. My money. My life. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, their voices rising behind me in a cacophony of anger and disbelief. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, grounding me momentarily. But as I drove home, the weight of what I'd done began to sink in. This wasn't just a fight with my family, it was a declaration of war. A battle not only against their expectations, but also against society's relentless pressure to prioritize family duty over personal freedom. Tears blurred my vision as I pulled into my apartment parking lot. Part of me felt liberated, like I'd shed an invisible chain that had bound me for decades. But another part ached with the realization that I might never repair these relationships. Still, I knew one thing for certain. I'd rather face loneliness than lose myself again. The silence after my confrontation with my family didn't last long. If anything, it only fueled their determination to break me. Within hours, Sarah began bombarding me with messages, photos of the kids in their cramped apartment, each image meticulously staged to tug at my heartstrings. The first photo showed Emma and Lucas squeezed together on a bunk bed so small that Emma's textbooks spilled onto the floor. Look how little space they have, the caption read. Emma can't even have a proper desk for homework. Then came another picture. Joey's crib wedged into the corner of Sarah and Tom's bedroom, barely an arm's length from their bed. He wakes up every time we come to bed, she wrote. This isn't fair to him. Each message was crafted to make me feel like the villain, as if my refusal to surrender my dream home was directly responsible for their suffering. At first I tried ignoring them, telling myself that this was just another manipulation tactic. But the messages kept coming, relentless and unyielding. By the third day, the pressure escalated beyond texts and photos. Calls started pouring in, not just from my parents or Sarah, but from distant relatives and acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Marie called first, her voice dripping with faux concern. Lucy, honey, I just heard what's happening with your sister. Surely you can find it in your heart to help your family. Uncle Bob followed suit, his tones stern and judgmental. Kid, you need to think about what really matters here. Family comes first. Even people I barely remembered joined the chorus. Miss Peterson, my high school teacher who still attended church with Mom, left a voicemail saying, Lucy, I always thought you were such a kind student. I'm so disappointed to hear about this situation with your sister. Every single one of them echoed the same sentiment. I was selfish, cruel, heartless, a monster for choosing my own happiness over their convenience. But the worst part wasn't the calls themselves. It was the sheer audacity of their intrusion. One night, as I sat alone in my apartment scrolling through social media, I noticed a friend request from an unfamiliar account. Curious, I clicked on the profile and found dozens of posts tagging me in passive-aggressive comments. It was Sarah, using a fake profile to harass me online. She posted pictures of the kids with captions like, "Some people forget where they came from, and family loyalty means nothing these days." I felt suffocated, trapped in a web of guilt and manipulation spun by the very people who were supposed to love me. Sleep became impossible. Every ringtone made my stomach churn. Every notification sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I stopped answering calls altogether, letting them go straight to voicemail. But even then, the messages piled up, each one more desperate than the last. Your mother cries herself to sleep because of you, one text read. I hope you're happy all alone in that big house while your nieces and nephews suffer. Enough was enough. After 2 weeks of relentless harassment, I decided to take drastic measures. I went to my mobile carrier and changed my number, giving the new one only to my workplace and a handful of trusted friends who hadn't taken sides in this mess. Moving day couldn't come soon enough. I hired a moving company I'd never used before, ensuring there was no way for my family to track the address through familiar local services. On the day of the move, I stood in my empty apartment for a moment, staring at the blank walls that had once been my sanctuary and now felt like a cage. The first morning at my new cottage felt like stepping into a dream. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patterns on the wooden floors, while the scent of fresh herbs from the garden wafted through the open back door. But the peace was short-lived. As I unlocked the front gate to retrieve the newspaper, I noticed scratches around the locks. Someone had tried to force their way in. My heart raced as paranoia crept in. Was it Sarah? Or perhaps Mom and Dad, desperate for one last attempt to invade my sanctuary? I didn't waste any time. That same day, I installed state-of-the-art security cameras and an alarm system, ensuring no one could breach my privacy again. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of feeling trapped by my family's expectations, I now found myself guarding my freedom with everything I had. Adapting to complete independence wasn't easy. Those first few nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, questioning whether I'd been too harsh. What if they were right? What if I'd made a mistake by cutting them off so completely? The silence of the countryside, once comforting, sometimes felt deafening compared to the chaos I'd left behind. Yet, as days turned into weeks, I began transforming the house into my personal paradise. In the sunroom, I set up a cozy workspace overlooking the garden. Birds chirped outside as I worked, their songs blending harmoniously with the soft hum of my laptop. I planted lavender and rosemary in the raised beds, adding splashes of color with marigolds and daisies. Every evening I watered the plants, watching tiny buds bloom under my care. Small but powerful reminder that growth takes patience and nurturing. On weekends, I experimented with recipes using vegetables from my garden, savoring meals I'd grown myself. One night, sitting on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea, I realized something profound. This was the first time in my life I truly felt free. Free from judgment, free from obligation, free to define my own happiness. For the first time, the weight of others' expectations wasn't crushing. MIT was gone. As the weeks turned into months, I began to see my life in a new light. The silence that once felt deafening now became a soothing melody, a reminder of how far I'd come. Every morning I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, instead of the chaos of family drama. My garden flourished under my care. Lavender bloomed, tomatoes ripened, and sunflowers stretched toward the sky. Each plant was a testament to patience and growth, qualities I realized I needed to apply to my own healing process. But it wasn't always easy. Scrolling through social media one evening, I stumbled upon Sarah's latest post, a photo of the kids smiling with captions about family unity and sticking together no matter what. For a fleeting moment, guilt gnawed at me. Was I wrong to shut them out? Did I owe them more than this quiet rebellion? Then I remembered their version of unity came with strings attached. Strings that would have tied me down forever. Their idea of family meant sacrificing my dreams for theirs, while mine meant creating space where I could truly breathe. I started reflecting on what family really meant. Was it blood alone that defined it? Or something deeper: mutual respect, support without conditions, love without manipulation? My parents had raised us to be independent women, yet they never imagined I'd use that independence to escape their control. Ironically, I was living closer to their ideals than Sarah ever had. She relied on handouts, while I built my sanctuary brick by brick, both literally and metaphorically. The guilt eventually faded, replaced by clarity. I didn't feel sorry anymore for choosing myself over their expectations. If anything, I pitied them for failing to see that true family should uplift rather than suffocate. Sitting on my porch one evening, sipping tea as the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something profound. Sometimes the best family you can have is yourself. And for now, that was enough. As I sat in my sunroom one evening, sipping tea and watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I found myself reflecting on everything that had led me here. My parents' favoritism had always stung, but now I saw it through a different lens. They hadn't just spoiled Sarah, they'd crippled her independence without realizing it. Growing up, they praised her effortlessly while pushing me to be so. Ironically, their dream of raising two strong, independent women had come true, but not in the way they expected. Sarah, the golden child, relied entirely on family support, from rent, subsidies, to childcare help. She couldn't function without someone else footing the bill. Meanwhile, I, the forgotten daughter, had built my life brick by brick, refusing to let anyone dictate my choices. It was a cruel twist of fate that the child they neglected became the embodiment of their ideals, while the one they cherished turned out dependent and entitled. I thought about all those years when Mom and Dad urged us to be independent, never imagining how differently their actions would shape our lives. Their love for Sarah wasn't empowering, it was suffocating, wrapped in ribbons of guilt and obligation. And though their rejection still hurt, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the best family you can have is yourself. At least until you're ready to build relationships rooted in mutual respect, not control or manipulation. Lucy's journey was not just about buying a house. It was about reclaiming her life. For years, she had lived under the weight of expectations, bending herself to fit into roles others had carved out for her. But when faced with the ultimate test, choosing between her dream and her family's demands, she finally stood firm. She realized that true happiness doesn't come from pleasing others or fulfilling their plans. It comes from honoring your own truth, no matter how daunting the path may seem. The road wasn't easy. Cutting ties with her family meant enduring guilt trips, relentless harassment, and even moments of self-doubt. Yet, through every challenge, Lucy held on to one undeniable truth. No one has the right to dictate how you live your life, not even those who claim to love you most. Her decision wasn't selfish. It was an act of courage, a declaration that her dreams mattered as much as anyone else's. Now, sitting on her porch at night, Lucy gazes up at the stars scattered across the vast sky. The air is cool against her skin, carrying the faint scent of lavender from her garden. Crickets chirp softly in the background, their rhythmic song blending perfectly with the quiet hum of contentment within her. This moment, simple yet profound, is hers alone. It's proof that standing up for yourself isn't just necessary, it's transformative. Her story reminds us all of something vital. Don't let anyone take away your right to live authentically. Whether it's societal norms, familial obligations, or fear of judgment, these forces can never define you unless you allow them to. True fulfillment comes only when you dare to prioritize yourself, to fight for the life you envision without apology. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is freedom. The freedom to choose, to grow, and to be unapologetically you.